So loading bar, I think for this one, there's not much of a use case involved. It's more like a presentation. So we can start straight away creating a component called loading bar. Loading bar, loading bar dot tsx. Create the component, and for sure we're gonna have some styling. So let's think about that. Yes, import it straight away. He knows. Wonderful. And let's add this into the dashboard, like at the top. How about here? Maybe I should display what I'm seeing. So bear with me. There we go. No, not this one actually. There we go. Okay. Let's set the loading bar into the dashboard. You can see it up over there. Wonderful. And now some styling. I have a little bit of styling prepared, which is this. It's a fixed bar, and there is a little bit of animation going on, like shimmering effect. Let's see how it looks like. We just need to name the tag the class, of course. So let's do like this, and then add a div dot load bar container or load bar. We don't have container. Loading bar. He's stubborn. He wants to add container. Don't know why. Okay, like that. Let's see what we got. Nothing looks like. So let's investigate the real life problem. Okay, so here, loading banner, loading bar. The code for this is two nested divs. One is called loading bar, which can have an active class or not. Here we can see it up here. So this one. Let's try to see how it looks when it's active, because you can see from the CSS that we have an additional active and an additional animation. So when that will be active, we will start seeing something happening. Let's add the active class, and boom, it's moving. Perfect. I enlarge it, but you guys can see this effect. It's not bad. The thing here is that we're gonna play with this active because now I manually added and removed it. We need a context or a place, global state management where the whole system, the whole widget is adding this information, is updating the status if something is happening. So all the elements involved can display their feedback to the user. In this case, we have something at the top, like this loading effect, this bar, but we are gonna also display it inside the widget, like we are gonna write loading dot dot dot. So awesome. So now let's create the context for the loading status, the global loading status. It's gonna be a new file, the context directory, loading status context .tsx. Right, let's add this. Prepare it. It's just it's a boolean variable shared with set is fetch data, so we can set and read this this flag. Nothing dramatic. This one is initialized to false, the status. So obviously we don't have something loading. And now we're going to use it with, with use context, same way as we did before in the loading bar. So loading bar will effectively pull the information about this, the status of the loading. If it's true, then we're going to print the active class over here. Okay, so let's do it. A tiny update over here on the loading context. The initialization of the context values needs to be done like that. We pass an object with is fetching data to false, and then we pass an empty function for the set is fetching data. Now, on the loading bar, we want to pull the variable is fetching data, so we do use context loading. Let's bring it here just to be more clean, and then we have is fetching data. We can, for example, console log it or use it straight away, to be honest, because what we want to do here is the usual string interpolation magic, where the active class would be conditionally added depending on the value of that is fetching data. So if you're fetching like that, then return active. I think we can use this syntax, right? Otherwise return null. Cool. Save it. Awesome. So what's gonna happen if we refresh? I hope the bar would disappear. If not, like it's not doing that, we need to console log and see what's going on with this variable. Actually, it is working because we are displaying that, and that's okay. When we add active, it will start shimmering with animation, so we're good. Let's, for example, let's set, to double check it, let's set it to true as default here. True. And then we should start seeing the bar moving. Actually here as well, true. All right. No. So let me check. Oops, the syntax was wrong. We need to return active or null like that. Save it, and now the bar is shimmering. Cool. Let's set it to false as default, and then here as well. Boom, it stopped. Perfect. So we can toggle that, and the way we would toggle that, this comes an interesting part, I think, is that in the context of, for example, the node where we are loading the Wi-Fi nodes at the beginning, we are going to set this global variable to true when we are executing the loading part, and then we're going to set that false when we finished. So essentially here we import the other variable from the other context and use it in here. In order to be able to do that, remember, we have to wrap the context hierarchy in here so that the provider, the loading status provider would be at the top, so that all the context that will be contained in that can use it. So like that, you can import it, and then we move all this stuff inside. Boom. From this moment on, the nodes provider, device provider can get advantage of using the loading status provider. So here we're gonna pull that information that we need, which is the set. We need to write rather than read. We just need to get the set is fetching data, because the reading part was inside the the loading bar component file. So in the node context where we are loading, How about we say we're gonna use the context of the loading status context. Loading status context. Yeah, let's grab that. Let's use it. And now we're gonna grab the set is fetching the data. Now, before loading, just up here, we can set the is fetching data to true. And then when it's finished, well, once we set nodes, or maybe here, we set it to false. Let's see what happens. In theory, when we load, it's kind of loading, but it's not setting it to false. Oh, oopsie. Here we have to say false, of course. Okay, let's enlarge it and see what we did. So loading, and then it's stopping. Perfect. So it again, it's loading for a couple of sec. Oh, for a fraction of a sec, I'd rather say, because the first call is super quick. And when it's finished, I don't know if it's very visible because the bar is small, but it works. Seems to be working okay. Awesome. That's a nice improvement. The other thing is that we need to do the same thing when we go over here. So at the moment it's not happening, but at this point another call has been performed. And for this part it will be even more important and more useful to edit because it's a long call. So we need to notify the user that something is happening. So let's do it straight away. It's a simple thing. So we go in the devices context. We're going to do exactly the same. Let's put this one here and the other context here. We're going to grab the context like we did here. Let's grab the loading context and the function itself. And now, before executing the function of the loading, we set it to true. So we are loading. And once we finished, we set it to false. Good. To be honest, this can be improved, of course, because we need to manage if something goes wrong. So by default, if we catch an error, we should reset it to false. Otherwise, the loading bar will stay there. But for now, let's just leave it like this. So let's load the nodes. Okay. And now let's go over one of mine. Boom. It's loading. You guys see? Loading, 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 loading. Hopefully, boom, it stopped. And also it stopped the bar animation. So awesome. This is the happy path. Now we're gonna take a look a little bit more what can be improved and what could go wrong. But I'd say it's a good effect, and we are improving the user experience for the user with this feedback. So awesome. So as things are now, as anticipated, we have this kind of problem when the response is returning an error. For example, these ones, they are returning an error which is correct in the sense that the backend is returning 403. We're not authorized for this Wi-Fi to read the devices. But the fact is that in the flow of code, we are not managing this error here, so it gets stuck in the set true, and it never set back the false. So what we are going to do here, the false is missing, but so set devices and then false, but it doesn't matter because we need to catch that instance of the error inside the exception. Okay, so let's do it. We're gonna try, right? And then we put this stuff in there, and then we're gonna catch an error. Something goes wrong. We are not gonna display an error, but we will definitely set this one there. So this two is not a repetition. Here we're catching something after there is an exception, right? Or we could add this one here like that. Okay, let's test. So if you go on this one, which should be one of the unauthorized one, you guys can see for a split of a second it's loading. The bar is in a loading state, but then essentially the execution goes in this bar because the exception is cached, and so we set it to false and we kind of reset the UI. If we go on one of the available one, the flow stays in there, so we stay in the try, and then everything works as expected again. So we fix that. Same thing we should do for the loading of the nodes in here. So let's put it here so you guys can see. And that one we put it in there on the right part. So we can try. There is no try, just do, someone said. But here we really have to try. And then we have to set to false. And then we have to catch. Oh, we have to set the nodes. And to catch the error. Okay, cool. Looks good. Now, when we load, if there is an error in here, we would reset the bar to not loading, which is what we want. Okay, perfect. So we fixed the bar. Next step, I think we will need to still display a more detailed feedback for the user of which part is loading. Like if there is a sub part like this, where we are loading the content of the nodes, then we need to display loading here. Okay,